All right, good morning, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the keynotes this morning. We're excited to kick off the breakout session here. I'm Courtney Bormann, and I lead our FinOps practice at General Mills, in addition to some other accountabilities I have for our broader cloud and global infrastructure governance area. I've been at General Mills about 15 years, started out in finance before switching over to digital and technology. And so governance is a really important part of my career journey and a topic that I'm really excited about sharing with all of you today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Josh to introduce himself, and we'll get kicked off and running here.
All right. Let's go. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you, Courtney. And I probably should get some of those fancy FinOps badges that I don't have. Get the demo, because Courtney is working all of them. I've also been with General Mills for about 15 years. We oddly started about the same time, but we didn't start working together until just a couple of years ago. About 6 months ago, I started leading our enterprise architecture team. Prior to that, I had a lead cloud architect role, and that role currently sits within my team. So I'll talk a lot about how the FinOps practice, along with architecture, work together to drive FinOps forward at General Mills. So a quick look at our agenda. I'll walk through a little bit about General Mills and our cloud journey. Courtney will jump into the why of governance, and then the two of us will go through a few different examples of governance in action, and we'll have some time for recap and Q&A at the end. So first off, a little bit about General Mills. General Mills has been around for more than 155 years, making food the world loves. As of fiscal 22, we are a $19 billion company, and 9 of our biggest brands are more than $1 billion in sales annually. So we have got 9 very large brands. You can see some of the innovation and brands that are part of our portfolio in the timeline there on the slide. Now, one of the key things about General Mills is we have a strong employee culture that really drives innovation, both within food and within technology, and how we move things forward as an organization. So with that, we really pushed forward into the cloud and taking that innovative employee culture and really transforming cloud for General Mills. And so going back to about 2019 or 2018, I should say, we were predominantly on. At that time, we really started having those first use cases that were pushing us, pushing the boundaries of our capability on-prem, especially in the data analytics side of things. And at the same time, data analytics was really starting to have cloud-only innovation. It was really hard to do some of the more advanced things on-prem, at least at the type of scale that we're really trying to do. So it really got us kickstarted and kind of refocused on, okay, we're going to make DNA happen in the cloud, and really focused on establishing our core cloud principles and looking forward to having our first data analytic use cases in cloud by the end of 2019. So about a year later or so, we were in cloud with some of really data analytic use cases. We had some great success with that. We continued moving forward, and we launched a full RFP, and ultimately selected Google Cloud as our cloud provider for all of our hosting workloads. And we did that we did that actually in 2021. We had that launch with Google Cloud as our primary cloud provider for hosting workloads. And then that same time, in the summer of 2021, is when we launched our FinOps practice at General Mills. And that's when Courtney joined the team and became that core leader for that group. You'll see around that time, we started our key migrations of data analytics and application workloads in the cloud, and migrations through 22 and 23. And in the fall of 22, we wrapped up data analytic migrations. And in the spring of 23, we wrapped up application and hosting workloads, including our entire SAP landscape, are fully in cloud. So now we're full scale in cloud. We have a few things remaining on-prem, but we're aggressively working to shrink our on-prem footprint down to virtually nothing. Very small scale on-prem, and really being predominantly in cloud and having the full integration and scale of cloud. So that's where we're at. That graphic that's on the slide there talks about our on-prem footprint and how that's shrinking. See how storage, compute, physical servers all drastically dropping. We're well on our path to making that happen. With that, our FinOps team as well. So you can see our FinOps team is quite small. It's predominantly led by Courtney and a few team members on her side, driving that core central team. But you'll see around the team, there's many friends of FinOps. And you definitely the model you heard in the keynote this morning is very prevalent at General Mills as well. Working together, a strong team culture, doing the right things for the organization. And with that, I'll throw it back over to Courtney for the what and why of governance.
Awesome, thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think we're going to have to adopt that total FinOps, maybe get some Ted Lasso branding going at General Mills. All right, let's jump in here. I'm going to just give a really quick overview around a couple of key governance topics, and then we're going to spend the vast majority of our time together today going through some governance in action examples. So hopefully that'll really help serve as that catalyst for you guys to think through how this could look at your company, and then hopefully have a few minutes too for some questions. So as you can see here, the cloud policy and governance capability falls under that organizational alignment domain. But like so many of the other capabilities within the framework, it touches lots and lots of different areas. So I love this quote that FinOps.org has around combining good policy and governance provides us with that mechanism to really orchestrate and direct our cloud activity. So regardless of whether you're at a crawl, walk, or run stage with your governance or your overall FinOps practice, there's absolutely things that you can do to continue to mature your governance posture as well as your overall FinOps work. The value of governance, so if you guys are like Josh and I, we've got a lot of items on our to-do list. It seems like it's a never-ending list that's out there. So you want to make sure, what is the value this is going to provide? Why should I put some of these governance items above others? And I think there's really, 5 things, and captured really well. This is a slide that I borrowed from the FinOps professional course. Making sure you're aligning that with your cloud strategy. Thinking through controls, so you're delivering that really strong return on investment on your cloud workloads, right? And then ensuring that the business value is going to be predictable. So nobody wants that surprise bill at the end of the month, or even hopefully better monitoring than that the next day. So making sure you've got the right controls in there to really provide that predictable spend. Of course, supporting best practice adoption, and then last but not least, protecting the organization. So I want to talk a little bit about how do you think through governance implementation, and 2 things to highlight here, really the considerations as well as ways to implement. So some of the considerations are both costs and benefits as well as timing. So this is really critical for us at General Mills as we have, busy key baking season as well as times when we're in planning. So we want to make sure if we're rolling out a major change, it's at a time when the organization has the capacity to adopt that. We also think through the resources to execute. So as Josh shared, we're a small but mighty team. So we oftentimes need our friends of FinOps to make most of the things happen that we do. So making sure that they've got capacity or we're aware of other key initiatives going on in that space. And then last but not least is, of course, organizational culture. So we're definitely a consensus culture. We really prioritize doing the right thing and having that broader, holistic business picture. So making sure that we're able to communicate that why in a way that people buy into is really key for us around governance as well as a lot of other initiatives. Implementation, these are all things that you're going to hear as we talk through the next couple examples of how this has come to life at General Mills with some specifics, but depending on what the specific governance is that you're going to be implementing, you can have review boards, you can have policies, of course. One of the things that I really love is guardrails, right? How do you put something in place that makes it easy for people, even when they're having a bad day, to not accidentally spend several $1,000s? And of course, then automation. So that's another one that we're investing a lot in right now. When you bring all of these together and really take into account those considerations and then the right way to implement your governance, you're gonna wind up with that timely, efficient, and effective governance that is gonna drive your FinOps and your overall business value forward. So with that, I'm gonna jump into our first example of governance in action, and then I'll turn it over to Josh to highlight a few more. So the first one I'm going to talk through is our committed use discounts. As Josh mentioned, we are primarily a GCP shop, but if you have reserved instance, this is another great place for this framework to work too. So the first step is really all around scanning the environment. So as we're scanning the environment, we're really thinking through what new features are going to be released. So this is in partnership with Google or with an Azure or whoever you may have in-house. And we're meeting with them. We're also bringing in our architects, all of our friends of FinOps. And we're really thinking through, will there be a new feature? Is there something on the landscape we should be considering as we're thinking about our overall committed use discount strategy? So once we scan that environment, then we go to set the strategy. This is where we pull in our leadership team. So we pull in both the director of cloud and global infrastructure, as well as architecture at General Mills, a lot of our architecture friends, and other kind of key players within the FinOps space. And we review our prior year's commitments, our prior quarter commitments, and determine what guidelines do we want to use going forward. The third step as we think through this framework is really gaining alignment. So once we've set sort of where do we want to be in the next quarter for our commitments, then we pull the people together that are actually managing those workloads, and we ensure that we're getting down to the specifics. What are the machine types we're going to buy? What amount of storage do we need on them? And we put that together in a plan. So as Josh mentioned, we're really just coming out of our major migration. We were meeting every 2 weeks because we were spinning up so many different machines. We wanted to make sure that our commitments didn't lag very far behind. Now that we're headed into a little bit more of a steady state, we're meeting about monthly right now. And once we've got that alignment and we're clear on what we want to purchase, we move on to actually routing the approval. So we do this as needed, making sure that this is also going to the key individuals that are responsible for those workloads, as well as the director of cloud and global infrastructure. And we use our internal doc routing system for that, and I'll pop up a picture of that to come. And only then do we get to the final stage that I think a lot of people think about, which is, hey, we want to go out and we want to buy a commitment, let's go out and buy it. And so really this is right after we have that route completed, we've got that nice audit trail out there, we go out and actually execute in the console of Google. And then of course reviewing that what we think we bought is actually what we bought and sending a note back out to the team. So, I think a couple of things, right, that we're using here, which is really a framework to guide our process, as well as that review board, as well as super critical in terms of how we govern our committed use discounts. Getting the process right is only one part, though. We also need the tools that are going to go along with that. So here's a couple examples of things that we use to facilitate this process. At the very top is our AD group. So you can see we use Azure Active Directory at General Mills, and this is our GCP Billing Administrator group. It means only the people in this group can actually purchase the commitment. And so with that group, we've restricted it to just our 3 core FinOps members and then our cloud architects. So it's very small who can actually commit these large dollars on behalf of the organization. As you take a peek at that orange star, that's our approval routing system. So through our ITSM system that we have on there, takes 5 minutes to fill out. It's intentionally meant to be very lightweight, but it does facilitate that, okay, what we thought we heard in that meeting is actually what we're going to be purchasing, and everybody is signing off on it, seeing it in writing. And then the last one up here is just a quick snapshot of one of the tools that we use when we're in that review meeting. This is direct from Google. We happen to be looking at a memory optimized machine here in that category. And you can see this runs a lot of our very stable workloads at General Mills. So we're at 97% committed. So we're taking a look to see, is that where we want to be? Is there anything else we'd want to buy? Or no, we feel good about this level. And so through really this governance process, we've been able to achieve a 50% reduction in our IaaS workload costs. And we currently have roughly 90% covered. So it's really helped to make the process effective, efficient, and ensure that everybody's on the same page with where we're going, and that we're making those purchases responsibly on behalf of the company. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to talk a little bit more.
Sounds good. Thanks, Courtney. This next one is our implementation of project creation and thinking within our cloud landscape. And taking a step back, when we started on our cloud process, we were very intentional about setting some principles for our cloud journeys. And one of those was everything as infrastructure and policy as code. And through those principles, we had really strong perspectives on you will not create things through ClickUps, and that includes even our non-cloud environment. And through that, it really drove us to add automation really early on. And building up the automation, we took a little bit of extra time to begin with, and it felt like it slowed things down. But it also gave us the framework to build automation and plug different things in to give us that consistency and the scale that we did as we moved our cloud forward. And you saw that we lot of workloads across 2 years, and we're fully in scale at this point. We've got a ton of consistency across it by having some of those principles and supporting automation in place. So this is an example of one of those areas, and it's a workflow that we have for self-service requests of projects. So GCP projects, you can think of them as resource groups or accounts or subscriptions and other clouds to the GCP project design. I like that concept if you're not familiar with GCP. But it's a way that any individual will go ahead and request a project, and it's just the form that they do. And one of the things that we have in there is a key set of attributes that we ask for. What's the purpose of this project? Who owns it? What's the name of it, et cetera. But one of the attributes we ask for is a maintenance number. And this number really is identified when it comes from our internal project portfolio system that we have that we build internally. And it has concepts of like IT projects, solutions that we support, and maintenance numbers, which really are budgets that are tied to solutions. And so with that, across the organization, and you can see the filters across the same attributes that have over in a solution portfolio. So.
Yeah, and maybe just while we give people a chance to take in the visuals, I was going to add the thing that I love about this is we've invested a lot in the automation here to make it really seamless to have this information because it is so critical to everything else that we do with the FinOps practice. So off of one number being requested and applied to the project, we're able to get everything else that we need and do the cycles on updating. So and Josh has been a mastermind at helping us to come up with all of this. So it's really been a big enabler of the FinOps practice.
And lots of FinOps.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a huge value add for us. And with this, variable spend is automatically attributable and you see significant time savings doing it this way. In the early days of cloud reporting, just spreadsheet. We don't want to do that. And then the final use case we'll walk through real quick is similar to the first one Courtney talked about with committed use discounts for compute. BigQuery, which is Google's data analytics platform, has a similar way of reserving compute for BigQuery. They call that slot reservations or BigQuery editions. It's kind of a new name for it. So it's very similar to CUDS, but for the BigQuery environment. This is one where we chose to balance business risk versus cost optimization or optimization in general. So we took a different approach with it. We actually leaned into spending a little bit more, not saving as much to minimize, the potential for business risk. And I'll talk through how we approach that. So first off, there's a savings opportunity. The Google Cloud Console is telling us, hey, you've got X number of dollars you could save monthly by having reservations in place. And yes, we agreed that we could. But at the same time, we went deeper into analysis to understand what the trade-offs with that would be. And so we quickly learned that under-committing could impact performance. So if we didn't commit as much as we're actually using, workloads start to be queued or slowed down or whatnot, and we're impacting our end users, dashboard performance or data processing jobs or whatnot. So that was a watch out. And we didn't want to overcommit because then we're not getting the savings out of it either. So there's a balancing act for sure in there. Another aspect of it was we start losing out on some of the cost transparency we had in BigQuery with the on-demand model. With on-demand, all of the costs with BigQuery directly go back to the GCP project where those queries are run and those processing is happening. So we get really nice, cost transparency, cost visibility into the projects that are doing the work. With a reservation model, it's essentially becoming a shared cost that then we have to, as a FinOps practice, allocate back out to projects based off their usage, which is something we can do, but there's additional, operational things that we have to manage and processes we have to stand up and automation to build, et cetera. And if we're going to do that, there's got to be a value behind doing that as well. So we, kind of had a lot of information going into it, and we did a small pilot in non-prod to prove some of this out as well. We bought a small reservation and we applied it to a subset of less critical non-prod projects. We learned through that process, got some feedback with the stakeholders that were in those projects, et cetera. And we brought it to our key stakeholder groups, the similar group that Courtney was talking about for committed use discounts for compute. We brought it to that group to say, these are our findings with BigQuery reservations. We could save money in this way, but these are the trade-offs involved. And ultimately, they decided to lean into the risk, or not lean into the risk, and choose not to have the savings because we don't want to have the risk of potentially having worse performance or inconsistent performance, and let's pay a little bit more in the short term. And that was kind of the next step that we took with them. And then, ultimately, we aligned with that group to say every quarter we'll come back and say, we think that there's opportunity that we should go after or not. Maybe we'll come back every quarter and kind of revisit that conversation. So we were kind of in that balance phase right now. And then the last thing that came up, for those that are BigQuery customers, there's actually a pricing change in there as well, which kind of totally makes us rethink the model as well. So BigQuery slot reservations have a new pricing model in there. The on-demand models changed slightly. And with that, like how we analyze the impact to us is different. So we're kind of going back through that cycle yet again as well. So it's an ongoing process is the key part. You don't make a decision once and keep it forever. You kind of have to keep on revisiting and refining and improving as you go. And so this is a great example of where we had informed ignoring and chose that to not take some of the savings to help balance some of the risks that might come with it. And with that, I'll throw it over to Courtney to wrap us up.
All righty, thanks, Josh. And a super rock star going without any slide there through the presentation. So, as hopefully you've heard, right? I mean, a few examples here of how governance is living at General Mills right now. But for us, there's still more to do. We're definitely, halfway through the journey. And so one of the things that we just did here this past quarter is really to do a maturity assessment across all of the FinOps capabilities. And with that, we found where are those highest value areas that we're going to target this next fiscal year. So we roll over fiscal years at the beginning of June. So really planning what will our next 12 months look like, and governance is going to be a key component of that. We're going to be looking at best practice creation. So now as we're coming out of this migration and we've got a lot of folks operating out on the cloud for the first time, how do we ensure that they have the tools and the processes they need to really be successful out there? And then, of course, selective automation. So Josh shared, that foundational tagging and labeling capability we've automated, but now we'll be turning our attention towards some optimization areas here as we look at the next 12 months to come. So that is what's next for us here. A quick recap. First, thank you all for coming. One of the three things we really want you to walk away with today. So first is effective governance will directly impact the value you can provide to the organization. So if you haven't been thinking about it, absolutely encourage you to spend a cycle or two on it and think about what could be a good starting point for your organization. Make sure you are weighing that business value of implementing against not. There are cases, as Josh highlighted in the last example, where the decision not to take action is the right one. And I think that can be counterintuitive at times, so make sure you do weigh that. And then, of course, I would just say there's lots of great implementation options. So just because you saw us talk about automation or a governing board doesn't mean that it can't be done another way. So please, take into account all of those different considerations and what's going to be right for your organization as you move forward. And with that, I think if the timer up here isn't lying, we've got about 5 minutes if people have specific questions or anything that we can answer.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna start over here. Is this mic on here? Oh yeah. First of all, this is all. Jesus, sorry. This is why. Thank you very much. First of all, great job with your own AV issues that you had today. So what we're going to do, please do not speak until you get this cube thrown at you in a gentle way, because that way we can pick up the audio so everybody can hear you and no shouting. Who had their hand raised over here? You ready to catch? Someone catch it? Okay.
Could you give us some examples of some of the automation ideas that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. I mean, so today a lot of our optimization happens manually. So the team will identify that there's a right sizing opportunity, and then it turns into like a string of emails in my inbox as the team is sending them out to all the different groups. So would love to get that incorporated into we have an ITSM service, so would love to start to get those in there as tickets and things for the team to action, where we can really track like who's taking action versus who isn't, and make sure that then we don't follow up with them, a month or two later on the same thing because we now have it documented. So I think that's probably the one that we're most eager to pursue right now.
Hi, great talk. I had a question about the values of tags changing. So I think we have a decent tagging strategy, but we have a terrible changing strategy. When the owner of the account leaves, we have to change the account ID, the owner name, or the cost center, and we don't really have a very good system to do that. How do you handle situations like that?
Yeah, I can go take that one. The benefit of us having a single label that we really drive back to that project, that project is just an identifier that goes back to our internal IT portfolio system, and that's where those values are changed. So maybe the owner was Courtney, now it's Josh. That gets set in that system. Then we've got overnight processes that take care of synchronizing those labels back to the project, the GCP project in this case, as updated labels. So we do push the labels onto the project itself as labels, but it's through automation. And it's really the one identifier that stays stable, but the attributes that are tied to the identifier can change, and they do change, and automation syncs them back up again. And then that does also push back into our billing exports as well. We do see the labels come into our billing exports, but it's all time series data in the billing exports. So you have, Courtney was the owner yesterday, I'm the owner today. In our reporting, what we do is we take whatever the most recent value of that label is, and we present that in the dashboard. So we don't show the changing in the dashboard necessarily of the owner. It's whoever the current owner is.
Can I ask how, I'm so sorry, but do you have limits on who can change those labels?
Yeah, I can cover that.
Yeah.
So there are limits as far as who can change. Some of the key labels are restricted, but otherwise a lot of it is open. And so some of it happens like if we have a shuffling of accountable directors, which just happened a couple months ago, we actually have a team that'll go in and say, oh, this used to be Solomon, now it's Jenny. Let's go ahead and make the change. And then as Josh mentioned, that automation picks up the change every 24 hours. So it's not perfect, but as they get the reporting right, if you see something that doesn't align to your name, I mean, people aren't shy about going in then and changing it, so. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Great speech, and thanks for sharing everything. And so I've got a question that's associated to tagging. Have you used your maintenance number as your sort of unique identifier, right? Have you ever come across a situation where that maintenance number hasn't been filled in? Is there anything that's come in through that, so you don't know the unknowns, for example?
Yeah, so a couple things we've done validation-wise is we do validate that the maintenance number is actually a valid maintenance number as part of that creation workflow. Early on, people were sometimes working around the system and putting 1, 2, 3, 4 in there or something like that. It created it, but didn't exist. So obviously we fixed that hole pretty quick. But we get that cost transparency back to the dashboard. So you can see in the Tableau side of things, you'll see this budget, this maintenance number has all these projects and all this spend associated with it. So for owners that are going back and looking at that frequently, which we encourage through our practices and onboarding, they'll see that spend pretty quickly, and then we go ahead and circle back and adjust and so forth. So we can update that maintenance number pretty easily.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to actually wrap this because we can't have the very first one be set us off for the rest of the day. So big, huge thanks for Courtney and Josh. Thank you so very much. You guys can catch them later. And
thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.